Islam has to adapt to current circumstances, and what was acceptable at the time of the Prophet ﷺ may not be acceptable now. Islam has to adapt to the situation, environment, culture, and we don't deny that there's an element of that, but they mean in totality, so much so that what could have been applicable at the time of the Prophet ﷺ is no longer applicable now.
Now, I'm not sure if he's being ironic or not, or he's providing a context and whether he supports that or doesn't, but those words in themselves are like a breath of fresh air, because any sort of fundamentalist interpretation of a religious faith founded in the past is by its nature problematic. In Judaism, there are written documents, oral tradition, people interpret even today. They don't think it's still the way to behave. I mean, some people, elements of it they might follow, but generally not. Christianity too. But Islam, I'll speak about this in a few moments. Look, there are moderate reformist Muslims around the world, of course they are. But they're under siege, they're frequently ignored, even condemned by the political establishment, the white, non-Muslim political establishment, and of course by radical Muslims. Author, activist Tariq Fatah is one of those people. He joins us now. I think that this is so central that because the monotheistic faiths are of so long ago, there has to be a contemporary interpretation. That doesn't mean you throw everything out, of course not. But some of the rules and laws obviously are of the era and the period, and they don't apply to the 21st century.
I think what the young gentleman said was remarkable. I mean, I was taken aback. I felt very good because it took him a lot of courage. Obviously, he was addressing an audience of practicing Orthodox Muslims, and for him to say that requires a lot of courage, because what he said could get him into trouble. He'd be called an apostate very, very easily. But I think he's associated with the Dawah Center in Toronto here, including Imam Shabir Ali. We both know him.
Yeah, I respect him very much.
These are the type of religious leaders we need, and many of them come from the Caribbean, which is quite surprising.
Yeah,
but it's dangerous.
But they have. You mentioned Shabir Ali. I used to interview a great deal on my former show. An intelligence and a gentleness, and an Orthodox Muslim.
Honesty.
Yes.
Honesty is primarily.
Say that, you know, he'd say, yes, there are parts of the Quran in terms of the way women are treated that are deeply problematic for contemporary society and the morality that I embrace.
Yeah.
So we have to interpret and understand. If you read the Old Testament without any context or understanding, there are aspects of terrible violence there.
Yes, yes.
But Jewish people don't live by that. They never have done.
The rabbis, a couple of thousand years ago, came to the decision of what is applicable and what is not.
Yes.
We have no institution of clergy in Islam. And where we have Reformation, for example, I would consider the Ismaili Muslims as the group of Muslims who embraced modernity at a very early age in their development and gave up the politicization. They too had a caliphate, and they recognized that chasing the caliphate or political rule was not the answer, but the way was to create a moral human being, an ethical person who services others.
They're often persecuted, though, by mainstream Islam.
Yes, of course. They're not considered Muslim.
Yeah.
Druze, for example, the offshoot, the Ahmadiyyas in some ways. Any attempt at reformation in an organized fashion is dealt a very heavy blow. At an individual capacity, you dissipate. I mean, once you are dead, nobody knows what you do. The written books, publishing is so difficult. So the challenge is huge, and the only people who can provide a solution are people who are Muslims.
Well, let's talk about this. This is very interesting, because the political establishment, which is generally white, post-Christian, secular, they would not embrace extreme Catholics, extreme evangelicals. They don't want anything to do with those people. They'll look for the moderate wings of Christianity.
Yes.
When it comes to Islam, they reject people like you and your colleagues who are moderate, and they embrace the extremism.
I think it is not an intentional or sort of they really don't understand what's going on.
Rather than malice?
Number two, they do not understand pre-industrial societies. Catholic clergy, whether it is in the Philippines, probably the Filipino Catholics would understand Muslims better than, say, the Italians. Mm-hmm. And therefore, in Philippines, for example, you don't have that major schism. And there's a reaching out over there. Western Christianity has not yet figured out what are tribal instincts in a society that looks for medievalism in the future. Mm. It's a very bizarre experience. You want to progress, but it's in the reverse gear. And the leadership of institution leadership doesn't exist. Al-Azhar is considered the head of Sunni Islam. What most of Christianity doesn't know, it was founded by Shia Islam. And I would suggest most Muslims don't know that. So where do you get the critical mass of say, the Aga Khans in Sunni Islam who say, time to give up political pursuits, time to build, bridges physically, look into engineering, enterprise, art, dance, music?
How seductive is Islamic violence and jihadism to young people in Canada, young Muslims? I meet many.
Very attractive.
Is it?
It is, because if parents are sending their young sons and daughters to the most orthodox clergy to read the Quran, parents have given up their responsibility to teach the Quran themselves, which used to be, and now it's subcontracted to people who appear as if they are knowledgeable. So educated sons and daughters are sent to, I would say, hate mongers who would teach the Quran in such a way that the child would come back rejecting everything of the last 200 years, considering Western society to be evil in its essence.
Here's, I think, one of the central problems. The alternative to violent Islamism should be moderate Islam, but too many young Muslims see the alternative to radical Islamism as complete abandoning of the faith, and so they fall away. Yeah. I don't want them to fall away from their faith.
No, and they become useless. Yeah. As you know, many of my friends who call themselves ex-Muslims, I say they walked away from the goal. So the opposition can score as much as they want. They become irrelevant. Ayaan Hirsi Ali, wonderful intellectual, has become irrelevant in the debate because she's no longer a Muslim. Yeah. The point is to stay in the fight and uphold your faith by saying that those of us who need a moral compass and find it in Islam, it's wonderful. But for heaven's sake, it's not a political ideology. Yeah. That's a simple answer. Instead, we are either bombing or accusing Islam or accusing Prophet Muhammad.
Tariq, as always, enlightening and a pleasure. Thank you so very much indeed.
Thank you.